Humans of the cardboard, today I am bringing you 4 different decks that I believe are just straight up better than pretty much the general consensus for them is. I mean, these decks are decks that like I don't see really anybody talking about except for very, very small communities. And in some cases, none. I've seen nobody talking about them, but I still believe are like just better decks than we really give them credit for. I know we're in a weird format, right? Dealing with tier, we're hopefully coming up on a ban list sooner than later, and hopefully that will kind of smooth out a lot of the format. But if you're looking for something more fun to play, I do think these are some interesting decks that you really probably aren't going to run into any mirror matches with, and I just think they're better than you think. So let's get into it. I've only got 4 here because I wanted to come up with 5, but I just couldn't convince myself that that a 5th one was like really good enough. So here we go. Number 1 is Shaddolls. The Shaddolls are in a funny place because, let's be honest, they kind of just got power crept completely out of the game by, not out of the game, but as a pure deck out of the game by tier limit. It's just the better version of Shaddolls. You just don't even have to play fusion spells or risk not opening them or anything. Your monsters get the job done. But I do still think Shaddolls are actually pretty good. Now, whether that means a Shaddol / tier limit build, because the Shaddolls are good to be milled and stuff like that, and playing a variant like that, or even a pure Shaddol variant, or even like a Shaddol invoked Dogmatica list like we saw a couple formats ago, I do still think this deck is just better than people give it credit for. And I do think it just kind of gets pushed under the carpet, pushed under the rug, because we have tier limit now. We just go, well, if you're not tier limit, why would I play you? Or Despia even, so it's kind of worse than Despia too. But I still think it's actually a pretty respectable deck at the end of the day. It makes, obviously, Winda really easily, and, you know, there's some strong points there, so respect it. Number 2, I've got Black Wings. This one I'm actually very, very interested in. I've seen a small sub-community of people looking at this deck, specifically a channel called Kanak Gaming, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that right, Kannak space gaming. Check out his channel because he does like almost exclusively Blackwing videos, and I'm not gonna lie, he makes the deck look good. Now, I don't know in the grand scheme of things where the deck actually lands, but I do think it's a deck that people just look at as like, oh, it's kind of a joke deck, it's an anime deck, it gets thrown in with the Dark Magicians and the Blue Eyes of the world. But I do think as far as anime decks go, this might be one of the best ones. Straight up. It makes a Towers monster, it makes a heck of a lot of negation. Even a lot of its starters and extenders, stuff like Simoom, don't really lose to hand traps. In fact, they like to play Bestials, and they don't lose to them, even though they're a dark-based deck that does stuff in Grave. Secondarily, some lists actually play Shifter in the main. So this is also a deck that can do actually some pretty respectable comboing even under Shifter, which is a huge leg up, and they can even play it in some cases, depending on how you build it. And I just think they plus a ton. I think it's a deck that definitely deserves a little more looking out for. If like a really high-level player wanted to play something fun and like different, I think if a legit competitive player picked up Black Wings and like really worked on them, I think like this deck could legit like top a YCS, definitely a regional. I think it already has actually. So I definitely think more people should be looking at Blackwing as a potential deck. It does some really, really strong points. It's not perfect. It's not the most consistent deck of all time. Inherently, you have to play some stuff like Small World and Prosperity to make it happen consistency-wise. But I do think the pluses are there. They are definitely strong. So number 2, Blackwings. Moving on to number 3, For Hire. Now, by the way, guys, I'm not going in order of how good I think these decks are in subsequent order. So just keep that in mind, because I don't think For Hire is like better than Black Wings or Shaddolls. But I do think this deck is actually really interesting now. They're very, very cool. They're very cool naming scheme, and they're very cool mechanic where they all pull each other out of the hand, they all trigger each other, which is very cool. But once they got their support back in Darkwing Blast, they actually do play pretty well. I've seen somebody who's actually, I saw a list that like performed well at like a locals. I don't remember where it was from, but I was actually surprised. And you know, I know it was a local, so I'm not reading too much into it. But listen, the whole base of this video is I think these decks are better than what most people think. Before this archetype got support, I didn't even view this deck as a deck. If you were even looking for a regional playable deck, you couldn't even sniff For Hires. They were awful, unplayable, outside of like a casual / like maybe locals level. And now I think they're like a legit deck that like again, if a really high level player were to take it and work on it and grind on it and then like run it up, you know, for a regional, I think they could top with for hire. Now they lose to certain specific things in the format, and that's definitely something important to note, but I do think they actually have some really powerful stuff. They have like the quick play spell that kind of went under the radar, but it's actually pretty good. It like tributes a monster to summon a for hire straight out of the deck with like a one level bigger, one level lower, so it kind of like helps you rotate into more of them and get consistently and play through interruption and stuff, as well as like Rex and also Dompa, the new Link 2 that's actually seen play in a couple of other decks, funny enough. But Rex is very cool. It's just like an actual searcher. It's like the best normal summon in the deck. I think it's the only one card play in the deck, actually. So I think they do some stuff. I used to think they were like completely unplayable, but they actually are a respectable deck nowadays. And the final deck, which is the one that is by far and away the closest to me personally, Ninjas. I'm a big fan of Ninjas, and at the end of the day, I think Konami has done a really good job with the Ninja support. They got a handful of cards in Darkwing Blast, and they also get 3 new cards in Photon Hypernova. Now, I know I'm kind of talking like about a deck that doesn't even have all of its support, and it kind of needs the support to really take that next step. But Ninjas, kind of like for hire, were a deck that I looked at year after year after year and was like unplayable. It just doesn't do anything. You have to open Hanzo or the deck is dead. Right, and that is just not the case anymore. Now, it's not a perfect archetype. It's not in an amazing position, but I do think this deck can actually play. And funny enough, shout out to MCole40, by the way. He does like a series of videos on his channel pretty regularly where he'll just kind of go over like really cool OCG deck lists that actually performed well, whether it's a small or big tournament. He'll just kind of go over some of the more interesting decks that were able to get a top there. And in like the span of like 2 weeks, he had like 3 separate Ninja videos where like Ninjas just happened to be one of the decks he showcased. And so in the OCG, decks actually pulling through a little bit. And they have like a ton going for them. Geo is a huge part of what makes them playable now. They actually have like really powerful payoffs for their ability to be able to summon a ninja straight out of the deck on the opponent's turn. They also get the new fusion monster that is just a banish on summon. We do have ways to summon him on the opponent's turn and pretty much just any point throughout the duel. Just really cool. And even from this last set, we got a lot of really cool cards, some really important extenders. Hopefully we get Green Ninja as well imported into Photon Hypernova. That would be really nice, so that we're not just waiting on like one random ninja card that's really nice for the deck and we have to wait like another couple months for it. Hopefully that's not the case, but yeah, long story short, I think this deck is like a legit rogue deck, not just, oh yeah, technically rogue, like whatever, it's playable. You're not going to lose 10 out of 10 duels to tier. You'll only lose 9 out of 10 duels to tier. I really think this deck can actually play. Obviously, a banlist will really help pretty much all of these decks, because all the decks we're talking about today are definitely decks that are like not high tier meta or anything, but they're the kind of decks that definitely move up a nice good chunk if stuff like Tier Sprite, Flunder, and even Despia get like obviously a big hit to tier, and then maybe like a nick to the other ones, just to kind of lower the power level of where the format is. I think a lot of these decks could move up and actually see some legit success. Ninjas, by far the most exciting for me personally, but yeah. So there we go. I mean, I just want to throw 4 at you. To be honest, we're in the middle of a news cycle, and I'm also low on time today, so I wanted to throw you a quick one, throwing you a couple of really interesting archetypes that I think you should take a look at if you're interested in, and you kind of were questioning, are they good enough? Are they worth even trying to build? I do think these 4 do have some redeeming qualities there. But I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff from your boy down the line, and I'll see you in the next video. Go Ninjas.